Hi, my name is Jake Whitten and I work as the Macmillan Education Asia Regional Trainer. Today we're going to look at how we can boost up the confidence of our very young learners through focusing on movement and meaning. We're also going to look at how this works in the series called Bebop. So, we've all heard of this term, total physical response, but I want to have look a little bit deeper at it today and how it's more than just copying the teacher's movements. We're also going to look at the end how we can focus on movement and meaning in stories and videos. Let's start with, what do we know about 3 to 5-year-olds? Well, 3 to 5-year-olds, we know that they're very curious learners, we know that they're very eager to please you, and we also know that sometimes they're a little bit naughty. But one thing that we've seen in a lot of research is that 3 to 5-year-olds tend to learn language in a more similar way to the L1 than adults do when they're learning an L2. So the L1 and L2 are learned in a very similar way. The idea is that it's the quantity and quality of the input that matters the most. The quality and quantity of input. So, let's have a deeper look at total physical response. Well, total physical response wasn't invented by a teacher. It was invented by a psychologist named James Asher. What James Asher noticed with his own children was that they needed to listen before they could understand, and they needed to understand before they could speak. They needed to listen and understand before they could speak. What we find in a lot of English classes is the teacher comes in, shows an apple and says, "Apple," and everyone has to repeat. The issue with that is that there hasn't been any meaning and understanding before the word. It's just understand this word. So total physical response is trying to add more meaning. So what is TPR and how can we define it further? With the listening and responding in TPR, the idea is that it's a way of quickly recognizing meaning and allowing for passive learning. It's a way of quickly recognizing meaning and allowing for passive learning. The idea is that grammar and vocabulary are not taught explicitly, but they're given to you in a meaningful way. I'm going to show you a technique, and this idea is about where you watch, you imitate, you listen, and then you say. But let's have a look at this baby first. How did she learn to clap? She didn't just wake up and start clapping one day. She had to watch someone do it first. The reason I show you this is because when the baby was clapping, it was probably imitating its mother clapping. So it saw it happen, and then saw the mother clapping, and then it tried to do it. But what it realized before it even tried, and this happens with my own daughter, before they even tried, they had to have some meaning. They kind of get this idea that clapping means I did something good. It's a good thing if I clap. So they see this happen. Then they have that meaning attached to it. Then they start understanding. Clapping means I did something good. Then they want to start trying to do it for themselves by imitating what the parents did. And then eventually they can clap on their own. And the rest of the people will be saying, "Well done, you're clapping, you're clapping." Then eventually the parents can say, "Clap," and the child can do it on their own. When they get a bit older, the child can start telling other people to clap. The reason this process is very interesting is because that's an L1 way of learning something, but it really does apply to our young learner L2. It means that they can pick up things by watching and imitating and not just being taught it explicitly. Let's look at the steps of a TPR lesson. Firstly, I just want you to watch and imitate what I do. And from those actions, can you guess what this story is about? Let's watch again. you have any idea? So this time I'll do it with my voice and you can get the idea and see if you match my story. In the morning, I wake up and I see my baby crying. So I give her a hug and now she is happy. Did you get it? The idea is to introduce it with the actions first and let the students try to think about what the meaning of this is, because this is naturally how we learn a language. Then by adding the voice later, they can start to match the sounds with the meaning of the actions. You can try this a few times and then you let your students try and come up to the front and they do the actions and the rest of the students have to try and repeat what they're doing and imitate. The final idea is to change the order around. So you might start with, and the students say, wake up, and then you might do, and the students say, hug, and then you might do, and the students say, happy. Then you can allow them to start changing the order and making it their own story. So one day, my baby was very happy because I gave her a hug when she woke up. The idea is to give the students control over the language, and because they have that meaning, they're more likely to remember it. So, what were the steps there? The first one was just watch the teacher and imitate the actions. Then listen and imitate. Just let it go in. So we're going to watch, then we're going to listen. Then listen, imitate and say. After that, they've had a few practices with listening, imitating and saying it themselves. You start to change the order. So they're not just repeating what you're saying in order, they start to realize what each different words mean. And then give the students a turn. As you notice, when I did it, I told a story. And the idea of teaching it in a story means that all this other incidental language comes up. In the morning, I woke up. Now maybe your language is teaching wake up or woke up, but they might pick up in the morning as well. This allows for different students in the class to start grabbing different language from the class on their own and not just picking up those words that you're trying to teach. That also means that they hear which language goes with the key vocabulary. So I gave her a hug. Now maybe you're just trying to teach hug, but then they start to realize that we give a hug and they start to hear that language in a natural way. So now let's have a look in a book and how it works. But it's going to be your turn to do it, okay? So, here is a page from the story song from the Bebop series. This is from level 2. This is a cool story. It's basically about the lion here, and he's going out for the day, and he has to do something with his friends. What actions could you come up with to teach this story? Let's have a look here at picture number 1. Very simple. He opens the door. And he sees the wind. He opens the door and sees the wind. And he wants to put on a jumper. He wants to put on a jumper. Or, if you're not from Australia, he wants to put on a sweater. Or, if you're from England, he wants to put on a jersey or a cardigan. So, you try it out now with number 2 and number 3 and number 4. What could you do with these? What actions could you have? After you've done all of that, you can start teaching the students the flow of the story and the meaning of the story before they've even opened the book. So by the time they open the book, they can start to connect the visual story to the actions and the words they've learnt before. After they've done all that, you can let them watch the video. Now, some teachers like to show the video first, and I think it's a good idea. Sometimes it is very valid to show the video first. Here's the video here. I'll just show you a little bit of it.
Look, it's a windy day. Put on your sweater, let's go play.
Now, some teachers will show the video first, as I said. I think it's also a great idea to not show the video first. Let them come in, do the actions, do your TPR, get that meaning into the class first. So by the time they watch the video, they're completely aware of what's going to happen, and then they can interact more with the video, and you can do further activities with that video. You can stop it and ask them to guess what's going to happen next. You can get them to try and say the words that are coming out. You can get them to do the actions while they're going along. You can stop it and get them to come up with a new ending. It means by the time they watch the video, it's not just input, but it's also input and output at the same time. For my TPR top tips, or for our TPR top tips, realize that it's more than just nouns and verbs. I think a lot of people think that it's just verbs and TPR is run, run, fly, fly, but there's so much more that can go into a TPR lesson. It caters for mixed ability, because of all that other incidental language that comes up around the stories, different students will pick up different things that they need to pick up. And maybe the lower level students only pick up the words that you're trying to teach, the new vocabulary. But the other students will start to pick up those little chunks of language that go in between, those little connected words and those little ending things that go at the end of a sentence. It's very learner-centered because it does start quite teacher-centered, but what you're trying to do is hand over control in the class. You start by doing the imitations and the actions with the imitations, but eventually the goal is to get the students to be doing it to each other. So you might have one student at the front and they're teaching the class, or you might have small groups in a review activity and they have to do the actions and the students have to try and guess what the words were or repeat. So it lets the students end up taking over the class, and your role is just to monitor and make sure they're all getting it right. And it's very meaningful because in TPR, always try to add the story in. If you have the story, it adds meaning to the students. And that's why we're learning the language. Our kids are not learning the language to go home and repeat words to their parents. They're using it so they can convey meaning. And TPR might just seem like an action activity, but really it's about taking meaning from the class and getting it out of the classroom. That's all my ideas and some ideas from the Bebop series on using TPR in the classroom and how to integrate that with the story videos that are there. If you look down below, you'll be able to click on some links and see some other Bebop videos. And also, there is a handout there and a PDF with some more information from this. Thanks for watching today, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.